Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vinosky, your host. I'm really happy to be joined today by Jeff Borello. He is co-owner and CEO of his own company called Andromeda Technology. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. This one's interesting. I'll tell people right up front, it's about IT, which doesn't sound that interesting, but it's actually interesting times, isn't it?
Very much so, in so many ways.
Yep, and we're going to dig into that. But before we do, why don't you just start by telling us, who you are, how you got doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, so as obviously you mentioned, Jeff Borello, I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Andromeda Technology Solutions. We are an IT managed service provider out of the Chicagoland area, and we been in business 30 years. As much as I hate the sound of that, makes me feel old, but we're very proud of that. We've been having a good time. The three guys that founded the company are all still here day to day doing our thing. As we like to say, we haven't killed each other yet. And,
Right.
So yeah, and we serve a lot of industries, but we've really in the last couple of years have been focusing really on the manufacturing industry and really trying to just niche down onto that, and a lot of needs there and a lot of places we think we can help.
Yep. What was it that drove you that direction?
So is it manufacturing specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually, I was fortunate enough to be at a conference and I got seated next to Jack Stack of Springfield Remanufacturing Corporation, who's a kind of a legend in the industry, I think. And just got talking to him about just manufacturing and coming back to the States, and how he really thought the government was going to put some money behind it. So that, combined with the fact that I've always wanted to kind of be a single industry solution provider, which is really easy to say, but hard to do. So those two things combined together, we thought, you know what, and for a long time, we were pretty specific in the medical industry, and that industry has changed a lot. A lot of practices getting bought up, doctors retiring, that kind of thing. So we were kind of looking for our next new focus area. So those two things kind of came together, and we said, all right, let's, the founders come from a little bit of a manufacturing background. We, in our prior life, doing a different type of business, we served a lot of manufacturers. So we have an affinity for that space.
Got it. Yep. Interesting. And I have to ask, for those of us who are Michael Crichton fans, where'd the name come from?
Exactly where it came from.
Is it really?
Yeah. So I was in high school, I guess, and I was doing some programming on the side, and I needed a name, and it was like, and I love that book. I love the movie. It started with an A, right? It had all the things. Now, it turns out nobody wants to pronounce it. Everyone wants to stick an I in there, and you get a lot of Andromeda, which is not the case.
Nope.
Yeah, it was the Andromeda strain, Michael's first book. And that was where I was like, I was a 17-year-old punk. I didn't know. I said, yeah, sure, Andromeda. And then when we got together to form the real company, I said, guys, I already got this name. I got this company, and we couldn't come up with anything better. So it stuck.
I like it.
It works. It's different. It's been able to provide a lot of fun in some of our marketing, and just some good branding we can do around the theme.
And there's probably not near enough diehard fans to drive a really negative association with the Andromeda strain anyway, right?
Right. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So before we dig into details, why don't you just kind of give us that 10,000 foot level of what you're seeing in manufacturing? What are the kind of hot buttons today, things people should be thinking about?
Yeah. So the thing that nobody wants to talk about and is tired of talking about is security, right? But it's just you can't pay enough attention to it. Kind of what we found in the industry is there's the manufacturers that are kind of on the cutting edge. They've automated a lot of their plant. They got, serious ERP systems. And then the other half of the coin is the people that are just so far behind in the technology that, they need to get caught up or they're going to get left behind.
Yep.
Obviously, AI is a big thing coming down that everybody's talking about, but we're really still focused on the fundamentals of, you got to have a good network, you got to have good equipment, and you got to be thinking about security every second of the day. And
Yep.
I think that's, as much as they don't, it's that it won't happen to me. Yep, it's going to happen to you. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. and you just cannot put all time. The amount of time you can put into precautions is money well spent.
So if we talk about, and we don't have to get super into the weeds, but things that people should be doing regardless where you are in that kind of IT uh, progression, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 things from a security standpoint that
Yeah.
manufacturers should focus on?
Yeah, at a high level, at the risk of repeating myself, is make sure you're paying attention to it. You've got to be
Mm,
having conversations every time you're talking about an initiative, a project, something new. Um, Security needs to be the first question. How does it affect security? But then a little bit more granular is multi-factor authentication. We come across all kinds of manufacturers that have not implemented multi-factor on accounts, right? Especially Microsoft 365. It's a big target for the bad guys,
oh,
and
good.
it's the single biggest thing you can do to prevent somebody from getting around. Next two things are training for your employees. You can put
Mm,
all the tools in place you want. The weak point is always going to be an employee just not paying attention to an email, not
yep.
thinking about what they're doing. So you've got to have constant training. A lot of people do annual training. We recommend annual with weekly little micro trainings. You got to keep it front and
Mhm.
center. And then I think the third thing that I would talk about um, is around the fact of, and I completely blanked out on what I was going to say, Jim.
That's okay.
Um,
We can always come back to it.
Yeah, but I think it's just the fact that you've gotta, again, I don't wanna repeat myself, but you can't, I can't emphasize enough that this is just a major, major thing that you gotta be paying attention to, and the employee training is a big part of it, because that is 95% of incidents occur, um, because an employee just wasn't thinking, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And, I think all of us can hearken up a personal story, either us or our close associates who've done something not very well advised in that regard. So it shouldn't at all be a surprise, should it?
No, it really shouldn't, and we're not up against the kid down the street anymore, right? These are
Right.
state-sponsored businesses that are employing people 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, with the sole purpose of trying to get into your stuff. And and they will eventually. So you got to be working on it all the time.
Yeah. And it's everybody. It used to be, that's only going to hit the big guys, but that's not true anymore, is it?
Yep. And that was actually my third item. Thanks.
Ah,
Yeah. Don't think well, we don't have anything they want. Everybody has something they want, and they
yep.
get one little piece that gets them to the next piece, that gets them to the next piece. And pretty soon they've built this portfolio of information about you or your employees or your vendors. And it's not just a hassle, and it is a hassle if you have an incident, but there's a lack of trust that gets created with your customers. And
Right.
yeah. And then the other big thing is you've got to have a cyber insurance policy. It should be a
Mm,
standalone policy. You don't really want it as a rider on your regular insurance. Um, these incidents cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you don't want to be and not to mention the downtime. So you have to
mhm.
have a good cyber insurance policy that covers, has good coverage, and you make sure you understand what it is and what it isn't.
Interesting. Yeah. And I guarantee you there are a lot of the small guys out there who aren't thinking about that at all.
For sure, because just like you don't want to talk about security, who wants to talk about insurance, right? Nobody
Yeah.
wants more insurance, but this is one of those places where it's just not an optional. You need to make sure you're doing it.
Yeah. Very interesting. In that regard, I mean, what are we talking cost wise for that kind of thing?
It really varies quite a bit. Varies the size of the business, but one of the biggest factors in it is just your risk profile. So one of the
Mm,
first things that happens when you apply for the insurance is they're going to give you a 50-question assessment that you're going to have to answer, right? Generally need a lot of help from your IT person, team, outsource, whatever it is. But ultimately, it's you that's certifying that, yeah, these are the security things that we have in place. And again, we talked about the multi-factor. If you do not have multi-factor on your 365, they won't even give you the insurance, right?
yep.
Um, this is an industry that's been beat up over the last couple of years, right? So they don't want to be taking on more of these. So if you're
Right.
even in a medium risk profile, they won't touch you, or the rates will be so high you just won't be able to afford it. So
Yep.
one of the biggest things you can do is, once you take that assessment, is figure out the biggest areas of weakness and go fix them, right?
Hmm.
And the
Yeah.
insurance is definitely driving a lot of this.
And then you get kind of the multiple benefits of you're fixing a problem that has you wide open. And I assume then you're also going to be able to drive your insurance rates down.
Yep. Yeah, it's a win-win for sure.
Yep. Got it. Okay. We talked way more about insurance than I ever anticipated, but very important stuff.
Yep.
When it comes to the more nuts and bolts IT things, what are the big hitters for you these days?
Again, I think we see a lot of wireless. Obviously, is a big
Oh yeah.
thing in the plants these days. Wireless is a great technology when it's done right. Most people don't do it right. So we have a professional services team that knows how to engineer these. We're a partner of Ruckus Wireless. So we have guys that can come in, understand the implications of walls here, hardware there. So a lot of people have a lot of technology issues with their wireless, and it's just because it's not set up and engineered right. So one of the big things for us is we tell people, people come to expect IT problems, and you're always going to have some problems, but
Yep.
It's not a requirement to have them. Having the right team, either in-house or outsourced with someone like us, we can make problems go away. That's one of our goals, is to eliminate problems, because no one wants downtime. No one wants frustration. So part of it is understanding what's the root cause of the issue and then getting rid of it so it doesn't come back. And the wireless is one of the places where we see that. Get the right hardware, get it engineered right. And then for the most part, the wireless will just work the way you want it.
Yeah. So that brings up another question in my mind, because I talk extensively about Industry 4.0 and industrial Internet of Things. And,
Yep.
when you talk about what we just finished discussing, there's some conflict there, right?
Yeah.
If we have the wireless, we have interconnections with outside parties, then we also throw ourselves open to that potential of bad actors finding a way in. So
Yep.
are there particular things that manufacturers should be doing to make sure they've got that, taking advantage of the latest technology, but not allowing some gaps in their security?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest things we recommend is segmenting your network, right? So your back office machines are separated from the plant machines, and
Yep.
your guest wireless is segmented from the rest of the network. So it's just this concept of segmentation, where if somebody does get into one area, it's not easily for them to get into the next. So just keeping things segmented and secured is a big part of it.
Yep.
And I think the other thing is just, again, it's making sure that, again, whether it's internal team, external team, is just taking the time to make sure you're, again, looking at things through a security lens.
Yep.
Hey, when's the last time we updated that network switch in our closet? When's the last time we did patching on our firewall? And part of the problem is, especially for manufacturers, they've for a long time, been kind of double utilizing some of their ERP software experts or some of their in-house, where they're not really IT trained, and they're kind
Yeah.
of double. But that almost isn't feasible anymore, because first of all, they're overworked. There's too much going on. You don't have time to do some of that proactive planning and proactive precautions. So there is a need to bring somebody in from the outside that can just augment the team. And again, security first, right? If the software guy in-house is thinking about software, he's thinking about security second, and that's backwards. So it
Yep.
really is bringing in some specialized people to help the team.
Yeah. And, you exist for a reason. It would be extremely difficult, especially for the small guys, to have that across the board expertise to cover all eventualities, but that's what you guys bring to the table, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things, especially manufacturing, we will see. So we serve kind of two areas. One is where someone has no IT experience in-house at all, and we are their full end-to-end IT guys.
Yep.
But then there's something called co-managed, where there is an internal IT team. They just need some help. Maybe they need some help with projects, or maybe they need some help with the service desk, and we can coexist in both those spaces. And our big thing for that co-managed is we're never there to take the IT guy's job. We don't want to put people out of work. We want to be there to help them, right? It's
Yep.
all about helping and letting the organization succeed while the individuals can also succeed.
Yep. So I have to imagine another piece of your business is just helping people understand what the opportunities are, right?
Yeah.
We talk on the show quite a bit about both floor automation and business process automation. You handle both sides of that?
So we don't specialize necessarily in the automation. We have partners that we'll bring in for some of that. We tend to focus a little bit more on the infrastructure part of it, the
Okay.
more traditional IT. But as more and more things either move to the cloud, or you get this hybrid environment where it does get very tricky to get data moved from here and there. And again, making sure that if you have stuff in the cloud, it's secure and how
Yep.
it's getting transferred up there is secure. So we tend to play more in that space and do the rest of it with partners. But I do think that, even you talk about the 4.0 and, data, just having the data available to make good decisions is a big part of this. And I do think we will, over the next coming years, we will see people like us and we will be, working on this, transitioning more into that consultative role.
Mhm.
Talk about AI, obviously the AI is a huge opportunity coming down the pike.
Yeah.
And there's going to be, these manufacturers are going to need someone to help them on the guidance side. So one of the things we do is every account of ours gets assigned to them a technical account manager who sits down with them at least once a year, and sometimes it's more like 4 times a year, and just works a roadmap with them. Where's the business going? What do we need to be thinking about in the future, and not just firefighting problems, but really helping them with the planning and the what's next in technology kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, while you don't get involved directly with the floor automation, I have to imagine there's some interaction there, especially as you say, the data situation explodes. Those machines themselves collect data, and oftentimes that's one of the toughest challenges is making that actionable.
For sure, and it's one of our core values here is just communication. So we are
Mhm.
very much partners with the floor automation people, or again, it's
Yep.
whether it's an internal team. But one of our big things is there's going to be problems, right? At some point, something's not going to work. The automation people are going to think it's the network, but it's a
Yeah,
collaboration, right? We never put the client in the middle and say, well, it's the automation thing, go figure it out with them. You need the technical people to get together, solve the problem for the client, and then let them move on, right? There's
yep,
there's no value in people finger pointing at each other. So that's one of the things we really try to do, is to try to keep it collaborative and really get the problem solved and let the customer get back on with making what it is they want to make.
for sure. Um, Another thing that comes up here pretty routinely, it's actually something that I push quite a bit, is I think everyone has opportunities for that floor automation, but um, the focus of all this kind of buzz around Industry 4.0 is floor machinery. And yet the bigger opportunities for a lot of manufacturers, especially the small guys, oftentimes is that business process automation, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that some. What are the things you typically see people missing where they could get the biggest bang for the buck?
Yeah, I think part of it is just looking at it through that lens, right? You need someone to come in, and just say, okay, let's talk about some of your processes, and say, okay, here's some areas I think where you could look at automation, or here's some areas where you could, get these machines on the network so that they could be accessible. But again, I think it's part of a proactive planning approach where someone needs to come in strategically and look at that.
Yep,
Just like most people, right? The teams are short staffed, the CEO's busy, the COO's swamped, and
right.
it's that being able to set aside the time to look at things through that lens, which I just don't think a lot of people have to do. It's everyone gets caught in the day to day, the latest and the loudest, and the next thing months, quarters, years have gone by, and you haven't even really started looking at what can we do to get a strategic advantage. Because, like I said earlier, if not, you're going to get left behind, and it's going to be a problem.
Yep. Now, when you have those discussions with the executives, how are you conveying that business case? What is it that justifies having someone like you come in from a money perspective?
Yeah, I think it generally depends a little bit on their needs, right? So one of the things is it's one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
So we will definitely sit down with people. One of the things we do during the sales process is we'll bring one of our engineers out to kind of look through what they have, what they don't have. And then once they come out as a client, we send that same person out. He kind of brings them on board. But again, figuring out where the deficiencies are, where we can add value, and then putting that together in a roadmap, whether it's a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, whatever kind of meets their budget needs. And so yeah, so it's almost one of those, like, you have to be doing this. You can't just People have for years thought of IT as just an expense, and it really isn't
Right.
now. It's a strategic advantage. You need to think about it as an investment, and you need to be looking at it as part of your strategic planning. So one of the things we will, offer and often get involved with is, listen, bring us to one of your planning meetings. You're going to have an annual strategy meeting. You need somebody there from representing the technology side of things, and so we love to help in that area.
Do you get the sense here lately that more and more people are kind of catching on to the fact that it's truly a money-making opportunity to get this side of the equation right?
I think it's pretty split binary down the middle. We see some
Is it?
people who absolutely see the value, and we see some other people who say, no, I don't want to spend a dime more on this than I have to. And yeah, that computer that's 8 years old crashes every couple of weeks that my bookkeeper wants to kill me. It's fine. Doesn't bother me. Um, and again, I think you know, it's very frustrating for the staff when they have technical issues, whether it's because the technology is old or you're just not putting the time into fixing it. And I think, the C-level sometimes underappreciates what that does to the staff and the morale and just the overall atmosphere at the company.
Yeah, for sure. Especially people, we get this new generation, they've come up with everything here, right?
Right here,
And,
right now.
yeah, stuff that
Yeah.
works all the time. Every time they access it, it's intuitive, and then they get into a workplace that either doesn't have that, or what they have is you have to read this 4-inch thick manual to
Yeah.
do it.
Yep.
You're not really attracting the new workforce.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's one of the things that's changed over the years, right? So, part of our packages, we, proactively patch all the equipment, and we'll
Yeah,
often get a question, well, why do I need you to do that? I don't have to do that on my phone. And
right.
well, it's just really not the same technology, and you can't treat it the same. And that's one of the challenges because certain things have gotten so much easier that there's an assumption that everything's that easy, and it's just not the case. And in a
Right.
lot of cases, that every year somebody comes out and says, "Oh, technology is going to get simpler, and it's going to put the IT guys out of a job," and it just gets more complex every year. It's exactly the opposite of
Yeah.
what they say.
You're kind of praying for a little of that to happen, right?
We would take a little calm before the storm for sure.
Yep, yep. Okay, last big topic has to be AI, and
Yep.
I hear people kind of frustrated around, "Gee, I feel like I'm being left behind. I don't really understand." What should people be thinking about when it comes to AI, and where is that opportunity gonna lead?
Yeah, so I'll probably sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but in one case, I
Okay.
think the hype is way ahead of the reality in certain cases here.
Yep.
ChatGPT is a phenomenal tool. Microsoft Copilot maybe is going to be a phenomenal tool. One of the things we tell everyone, so Microsoft Copilot, there's the Copilot on the internet, and there's a Copilot that lives inside of Office 365. Be very careful with Copilot that lives inside Office 365
Mhm.
because if you do not have your security set up right and your file segmentation set up right and all that, and you give Copilot to your bookkeeper, and your bookkeeper says, "Give me the salary of the CEO," and if it's in a document somewhere, Copilot will find it. So we have been very cautious with people on at least on that specific tool of you got to get your framework and your foundations set up first.
Yep.
But I think in general, it's obviously going to be a game changing technology. I mean, I don't think we've seen anything this big since the internet came around.
Mhm.
Um, but I do think the like I said, the hype is way in front of the reality. It's ChatGPT, phenomenal writer, right? But I think part of it is you've got to start working with it now. The difference between getting good results and great results from an AI is
Mhm.
learning how to use it.
Yep.
You can ask it, write this, or you can say, write this in my style and give it 10 writing examples, and you get a lot better output. So it's the case
Ah,
where
interesting.
the more you can start spending with it, this is obviously not going away. It's going to be a game changer. So you need to
Yep.
start at least understanding it at the level of you can have an intelligent conversation about how it's going to impact the business. Maybe that's not for a year or two, or maybe it's 6 months from now, but the sooner we all start learning it, talking about it, and getting in there, the more it's going to be an advantage.
Yeah, well, and the fact is, if it's a year out, that means tomorrow,
Yeah, for sure.
realistically.
No
That's
doubt.
what it's gonna seem like.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
as you look at your business now, I should ask this up front. What is your area of coverage geographically?
So, we cover pretty much manufacturers in the Midwest. So, the 8 states right around Illinois, but we
Okay.
can go anywhere. We certainly have customers across the country. We have customers in other countries. We have partners set up where if we need someone to go on site, we can do that. If we need to fly somebody out, we can do that. 90% of our work done these days is remote, right? You make a remote connection to
Yep.
almost anything these days. But really our primary focus is we're trying to stay in it's Midwest for now. And eventually over the coming years, we will kind of branch out and really be more across the country, but we can handle anybody anywhere.
Okay. And then from your business perspective, is that kind of your biggest opportunity? Is that growth?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of us out there. There's a lot of IT MSPs out there. But we think by some of the things we're doing to differentiate ourselves, we are NIST 800-171 compliant, which is a little bit unusual in our space. So we're a very process-driven company. So I think those and just learning and having the right partners in the manufacturing space are really going to set us up to be a big player for the team.
Very cool. And my last question is just throwing it to you. What are your final thoughts that people ought to hear from the manufacturing IT perspective?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is IT can be very frustrating and people think there isn't a better answer out there. But I'm here to tell you there is. Whether that's your internal team who's overworked, maybe you already have a managed service provider taking care of you and you're just not happy with them. It doesn't have to be that way. There are better companies out there. We believe we're one of them. And if you're frustrated or things aren't going your way, reach out. Let's have a conversation. We're always here to help people, right? And in some cases, we can't help, but we can usually give them some guidance and get them in the right direction. So I would, take advantage of that. And that's one of our core purpose in the company is we're here to help. Well, you can actually see it behind me, helping people succeed. That is one of our goals. And so we're here to help.
Good deal. Well, I will put a link to your webpage in the show description. So anyone out there who needs some help, just pan on down there and give it a click and get a hold of Jeff or one of his colleagues and they'll help you out. So Jeff, thanks so much. This has been really enlightening.
Jim, thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.
Yeah. And we're here every Tuesday. Thank you guys in the audience. You are why we're here. I can't promise every episode is going to be as enlightening as what Jeff brought us, but they're all at least a little enlightening. So tune in. We'll be here. And love to have you back. So Jim Vinosky from Manufacturing Talks signing off. Thanks and so long.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.